Hi everyone, in this tutorial I will show you how to create a simple living room in Cinema4d and vray. As you can see, I have already some material in my scenes and it's already done, but I will show you how I have created step by step. So let's start. First of all, if I uncheck my windows and my furnitures, I'm gonna create my rough scene. As you can see, it's simple interior building. As you can see in my scene, it's set it up like something like this. Is simple cubes and with some modeling, but never of very complex to redesign it. And I also have a roof and a pavement in my scene because it's important to block the lights from the top and also in the background, as you know. After doing this, I have set it up my scene by merging on them my sofa, some coffee tables, these props here, and that represents the main subject of my scene. I really like a frame like something like this with the lamp in scene. That's also a model that I've downloaded from the web. But I want a more heavy space, so to do this I return to my views. I create a new camera, something like this, select it, and I want a very wide aperture, so make it 24 millimeters. It's a wide angle framing, and start to frame up my scene. I also wanna go back a bit to see better these parts of the scene and frame a little bit more the sofa in my picture. So to do this, I'm gonna to go backward, but as you can see, I'm gonna to find the wall of the structure. So to avoid this problem, I wanna go to details in camera, enable in the near clipping. I wanna to switch it up something like this, so I'm pretty happy with this, and this enable the camera to see through a wall. Simple in speaking simple. Okay, let's assume the position of my camera is the same, this one. I really like this. So as you can see, this is my old camera. I have also create a vray physical tag, simple. You can create a right click, vray bridge tag, physical camera, or also going here on vray bridge cameras and create a vray physical camera that creates already set it up a tag with a camera. So I can delete it. I have reduced the kinetic effects to 0. By default is set it up to 1. Leave the white balance preset to the standard one, that's it, the D65. That's because I want to use a V-Ray sky map that's bring me in my scene quite a bit of blue from the atmosphere. After doing this, I set up the film ISO to 200. Normally set it up, I think, to 100, as you can see here. And the shutter speed to 50. That is usually set it up to 200. so I increase the amount of light that bring me in my scene. After doing this, I have create vray sky and physical sky and sun by going to vray bridge, lights, and create a vray physical sun and sky. And after doing this, I have this one. I position it in the proper position by moving this, and it's linked with the target, so I can position the target in the best spot for me and do all the settings that you want. I already switch off the sun, so it's only a sky. So I turn it on this sky only, so the physical sun is invisible. After doing this, I also set it up the turbidity to 3 because I want more blurrish shadows. And that's all for the main lighting. We can see what it look like my scene now. So I'm gonna create a new advanced material that I want to override my materials. So I think rename it override. Override, sorry. Okay, and put it on my material override here, and I want to switch off all the things that I want to see in my scene for now, and let's see what it's look like. Sorry, I wanna show you step by step, so I turn off this light that I will show you in a moment and re-render. Okay, as you can see, I have some highlights spotted here, but I think it's good because with some darkest material that I want to create in my scene, that will compensate these highlights here, and the scene works good for me. After doing this, I also create a secondary light from my pendant lamp here. So I simply create an omni light by vray bridge, vray lights, vray omni lights, and I put it up into my lamp, something like this, and I set it up to a radiant power of 100 watts, enables shadows, create a little bit of blurriness in the shadow radius by increase this value to 25 centimeter. By default is set it up to 0, but it will create a very dense shadow. I want to have some blurriness on it, so I set it up to 25 centimeter, and I activate inverse square in decay. After doing this, I simply choose the best range of decay from here, and I show you what it's look like. The light color is normal white, and this is the contribute of my secondary lights in my scene. Okay, I have some little splotchy on my scene, but we will fix it later with some render settings by increasing some render settings. So the basic the basic scene is set it up. Now I will show you how I create the floor and the main fabric material. So I will show you my my process behind this image. To create the floor, I create this simple parquet from this image that I will download from sketchup-texture.club for free. And by using this image, I will copy it on this layer on the specular map. I apply to it a filter, desaturate completely, and adjust the brightness counter to create this medium gray map, to create some variation in my specularity. And after doing this, I reduce the reflection glossiness to 0.75. After do this, I copy this filter and paste it. Sorry, for this image I have also the bump on it, so I will show you in a moment what you can find on SketchUp Texture for free. So I have, as you can see, the diffuse map and the bump map. Okay, so I have already it, and I don't have to do anything. So I created this basic floor material that works really good for me, and I set it up the amount of the bump of about 0.25 centimeters. After doing this, I have to create some other materials. Some are simple one by Chrome for the windows, so it's simple. Also black diffuse with higher specularity and higher Fresnel IOR, and reflection almost 1. I think 0.9 is good for me. Some rubber or rubbish material, some glossiness, everything material you can find on my previous tutorial. But for me in this lessons is important the framing, the system of two lights, the sky, and show you what it's my process behind the scene. I hope you to help you in some forms with my knowledge. For the walls, I also create a material like this. I use a bluish grayish color, as you can see if I turn it up the specularity, with some overriding of this scratchy map. Very simple, and it's a little bit of this 0.1. As you can see, it's very simple and light, the effects of this map. I don't want an effect very strong like this. A little bit of noise in my perfect color of the diffuse. After doing this, I copy this map on my specularity channel. Also here a little bit more of influence of my white color. set it up the Fresnel IOR to 1.3 because I want a very low reflection in my walls, because the concrete works something like this. And I decrease the Fresnel refraction to 0.55 because I want to pack a very matte material, something a little bit of reflection, but a very blurry reflection. Then doing this, I also create another, and I have assigned the material with UVs on my walls. I show you in a moment. So I select one of my walls, I set it up my projection in cubic, and it's worked good for me. If you don't want or see something wrong on your texture, you can simple move it with these controls, or increase the size, decrease the size, anything you want with this simple control. After doing this, I create the fabric material. It's a little bit tricky, but not very difficult for my opinion. I create a simple material that I don't want some reflection, real reflection on it, but I want to use a Fresnel material with my basic texture. So I create a layer with my texture. This one. It's a simple texture with came with this model. Then I increase the brightness because I want more white fabric. And after doing this, I add on it a Fresnel layer. So I create simple shader and Fresnel. And after doing this, I'm going here, and by default it's set it up something like this, and I create a new white node and set it up with this type of gradient that works for me because I want more white in the front, and in the mid of the model I want a more darker color, and in the top of the model I want again a little bit of white. After doing this, I create some other material for the light, from the lamps, and for the coffee tables, but are similar to the material that's already explained for this, and also for these cushions here. It's a very similar one with the texture of my sofa, but I already had BAM map because I want a more intense looking with 0.25 of force, and in the layer of the diffuse I set it up the Fresnel by default. I also put it on the layer folder, but I don't touch this because default works fine for me for this kind of effects. And I set it up the intensity of the Fresnel of about 15% because 100% is too heavy, as you can see. After doing this, I usually go to my render settings, turn off material override, and see what happens in my render now. If we compare, okay, I can delete it. If we compare this one, that's the main lighting, you can note with darkest material how the lights it will be absorbed by the dark material. So parts of the image that bring totally overexposure in main light pass, it's bring to a normally exposure one in this kind of situation. Okay, I stop the render because I don't want to see the complete one. but I now turn my render settings on progressive, so I can show you better the results of my render in a quickest way. Can delete it and compare this one with the previous one. The lights works very well. Let's turn off the pendant, and I really like these effects. And as you can see, the scene is not burn it up. And I think I wanted to increase some details here, maybe create pictures and add some props on my table to create a little bit of realism, and it's like you have someone is lives here, not it's increase the realism of the scene, the whole scene. Okay, so I have already set it up my scene with some trees and plants and pictures, so I show you. I usually gonna add some windows. It's a simple Windows model, duplicate it 3 times to create all the aperture that I want. I show you in a moment. As you can see here. Now I create some props. So I add plants, sunglasses on my coffee table, and a picture on the background. I really like the central symmetry that gives me with my pendant lamp, the picture, and this kind of glasses on top of my tables, and also like the dynamism of this scene that gives me this side of the sofa with the linearity here, this line of the walls and columns and something like this. I really like this kind of perspective. Another important things that I think it's to add to increase the realism in some trees and backgrounds, because this area is too white in render, as you can see in my picture viewer. So I also imported some trees. You can find it on many sites online. I duplicate it 3 times, rotate, scale, and put it up in proper position to create some variation in my scene. After doing this, I simply render my scene. To have a last check, and after doing this, I change the rendering mode, because in progressive it's very long and not precise for me for a final results. So I usually turn the render to another type. I usually use irradiance map and like cache with bucket render type. And after the render, I will show you some little color correction that I want to use in Photoshop. So I like the effects of my trees, but I don't see the props because I uncheck this red one can. This second spots. If turn it red, it's disable the model of this folder from render. So I have to turn it off the red and re-render my scene to see the correct results with my props in scene. Okay, I think my scene works well for my preview. I really like the glasses and the bottle of my coffee table, the plants on the background here in the corridor, and the trees on outside the windows. So I turn it off my render, and I see you some render setting that I usually use for this kind of thing. Going to render settings. I can duplicate this one and rename it to HQ. Okay, in Finalizing's folder, I will set it as sample type to bucket. Wait, I think this kind of subdivision works good, and set it up the threshold to 0.007. I'm going to indirect illumination, set it up the primary engine to irradiance map. Okay, and in the radiance map settings, I'm going to increase a little bit the hemispheric subdivision to 80 and interpolated sample to 35. I usually use these settings, and I think it's work good, but it's up to you to find the right settings for the GI. And important to reduce the splotchiness of the scene, increase the subdivisions of my samples of light cache to 150, and I usually use to increase a little bit of the size, so it's the samples come to merge one each other, and I like this effect because create a little more smooth image. So I want to check with the render region the effects in this area. That's it's the parts more where I have some splotchiness in my test render. Okay, I think it's good. Yeah, let's try some other area, something like this. Okay, I think it's good. So finally, I wish have a more resolution in my render. My full HD for this kind of tutorial is good, but it's up to you. So I set it up my pixels and simply launch the render. Okay, as you can see, the render is finished, and it's a good start for some kind of post-production effects to emphasize the moods of this render. I really like the central symmetry of this image that flows the perspective very good, and I think it's now start to increase some color correction on this image. So to do this, I am on Photoshop. I usually convert it to smart object and apply a camera raw filter to change a little bit the lighting of the image. So I think it's good to increase a little bit the exposure generally, and maybe the contrast. Yes, something like this, maybe about +10. I think also the highlights, I want to increase a little bit the highlights, maybe the shadows to have more darkness here, blacks. Yes, something like this. Increase a little bit the texture. No. Maybe we can use a non-sharp mask to avoid this some ugly results on the floors. So for texture, set it up to 0. Maybe we can try to add some vibrance on our image to increase a bit the colors. So +10 is good. And I think we can increase a little bit the details of the image. Something like 20 works good to increase a little bit of small details. And we can try to reduce some noise in the image. And I think it's a good start for me. So I click OK. As you can see, this is my raw render. This is my post-production with camera raw. I think it's good. After doing this, I usually gonna to duplicate this layer, rasterize it. Okay. And now I wanna create blur effects for the lights emitted from the pendant lights and outside the windows, sorry. So I'm gonna to blur it to with blur. Sorry, not blur, but blur, Gaussian blur. Maybe and have effects, something like this. Could be good, maybe something much. 50 pixels. OK. Set this layer to add a mask and invert it to completely hide this layer. Now with the brush, I usually gonna to reveal it in the place where I want, so maybe 250 would be great. Something like this. Duplicate it. Remove the effects from the lights, and now with this layer I want to create two duplicate layers to separate the effect of the light and the windows. So now it's time for the windows, so I can reveal it with my brush. Something like this could be a good start. Maybe we can try to 25 pixels to create this kind of effect of it. Now we're gonna reduce it to create a more light effect, so maybe 50% could be great. Okay, I think it's good. Yeah, I think it's the right amount for this kind of effects. And we do the same with the pendant lights. So I want to see a little bit these forms, these curves here on the pendants, but not these effects. This is completely unrealistic for me. Okay, I think it's a good start. Oh, sorry, we now I'm gonna to modify these effects with some color correction and saturation balance to create a less greens saturated area and increase the saturation of the parquet. So I usually use some adjustment layers to create this, but I think a good start is selective colors, so we can start to reduce the amounts of greens. So I can do something like this for my greens. As you can see, I create a more realistic looks for these plants in the backgrounds. And now we're gonna do the same kind of things for the floors. So I can add another selective color. So this one I will rename it plant, and this one maybe floor, to keep it more in order. And now we try to add some reds to it, something like this. Okay, I think it's better now. And we can try to add some color balancing in the midtones. No, this one change the mood in ugly mode, so I can delete it and use new saturation to increase a bit the saturation of my image, something like this. Okay, I think it's good. Now I wanna invert the map to hide this hue saturation layer. Choose a very good, very large brush and start revealing it on the floor. So as you can see, now I have a more brownish look for the floor, and it's more saturated. I think it's a better image for me, so I can choose the right amount of saturation and maybe also lightness. No, license still the same level, and I think it's a better result for me. Lastly, I wanna duplicate all the layers, merge the new layers that I duplicated in a newest one, apply a filter of blur, so something like Gaussian blur with a small amount, like 4 or maybe 2 pixels, to create some depth of fields on my image. So again, I create a new mask, invert it, and start painting with a large brush on the image. So maybe you can try with 400, an opacity of 10% or maybe 20%. Start painting in the foreground to add some little depth of field on my scene, something like this. There we go. The effects could not be very pronunciated, but already reveal some depth in my image that in the the basic render isn't in my picture. So I think it's good. Maybe we can try to remove a bit from this first column, and I think we have created a good render. So we can compare this one with the basic one. This is the basic render, and this is the post-produced one. So I think the result is very different and more accurate and natural for this post-produced image from the raw render. So I hope you enjoyed this kind of tutorial. Follow me on Instagram and here on YouTube. So see you at the next video. Bye!